At the beginning of the film, we see a lady. She was giving her son a hug and reassuring him that it is only a nightmare. This woman's name is Jess. She reassures her son, "Don't worry, I'm on your side." The next day, Jess was getting ready to go somewhere when she goes outside her house into the garden to get clothing. She discovers her son's broken toy there. Her son was drawing inside the home. Meanwhile, his colors fall on the floor. While Jess was cleaning it, the doorbell rang. When she went outside to check, there was nobody there. Now Jess returns and she begins to pack her luggage. She also invites her son to join her. However, her son wasn't going along with her and doesn't want to go with his mother. Because her son didn't agree with her, she leaves her son at home and goes outside alone. When Jess approaches her friend, he asks, "Why are you concerned?" Jess tells him that "I'm not worried, just exhausted and nothing else." Her friend introduces her to his other friends as well. The boat in which they planned to spend their vacations was named Triangle. Along with Jess, a large number of other friends were also in the boat. After boarding the ship, Jess goes to sleep. There, she observes a dream in which she finds herself on a beach. Meanwhile, terrified, she wakes up. Her friend approaches her in the meantime and asks, "What happened?" She tells that "I've probably seen a nightmare, nothing else." On the other side, we see Jess's friend Greg. His friend approaches him and inquires as to whether Jess intended to bring her son along. So why didn't she bring her son with her on these vacations? Greg tells him that "She told me that her son had gone to school at that time. It was Sunday, and how could he go there?" Greg tells his friend, "What do you have to do with this? Keep focusing on your work." After some time, a huge storm was ready to approach their ship. Greg was contacting the other ship in order to get some help. In the meantime, he hears a girl's sound on the radio. She was saying that "He'll kill us and save us." Later, she disconnects and a huge storm hits there. They try to save their ship, but it has sunk into that storm. They all had life jackets on, which allowed them to all escape. Now, they all have boarded their sunk ship. But one of their friends went missing, and no one has seen her. They observe a huge ship arriving from a distance in the meantime. They wave their hands for help, but they all secretly board that ship. As the ship sailed near them, they have now boarded the ship, but they didn't see anyone on the ship. The entire ship was empty. Jess, while seeing the ship, remarks to Greg that "It appears as though I had previously been here." The other friends of Jess see a picture there. In this picture, this ship was drawn. Along with that, there was a picture of a king. It was written beneath it that the king had reclaimed his life from the death god. He believed he would live forever on earth and desired to immortality. The death god has instructed him to take a big stone from a large mountain. "You'll become eternal forever if you do this. You are able to exist on this earth," and when that king took the stone from the mountain, the stone continues to fall. It will keep happening until the king realizes his mistake. They were all reading history together. They hear something clanking there. When Jess' friend checks there, he discovers some of Jess' keys. Jess was now with them, so how could it be possible to have Jess's keys there? They were all shocked. In the meantime, a girl says she might be Heather. She was referring to the young woman who disappeared when the ship sank. Now that they believe she might be the girl, they check her out in a room. When they enter in the room, they became shocked to see there were numerous editable things there. It seems that these things had recently been kept by someone here. When Jess' friend inquires about the time, Jess's watch had stopped at 8:30, while her friend, Greg's watch, had stopped at 11:30. Jess, meantime, notices something abruptly. Meanwhile, they go inside to check, and their two friends were still in the room. Greg and Jess were conversing when they heard a sound from a room. They go to check the room. They find a message "Go to theater" written in a blood in the mirror. They go inside the theater to check. Jess was forbidding her friend Greg. She forbids him from going since there might be danger there. Her friend disagrees with her and goes into the theater. Jess returns to the room in the meantime, where they found fresh meal, but when Jess gets back, she gets shocked to discover that place because the fresh meal was spoiled. Additionally, her two friends who had stayed in that room were not present. She thinks that they may have gone outside. A friend of Jess, who was completely covered in blood, arrives there in the interim. He attacks Jess in an effort to defend. When counters back, her friend has died and she hears the sound of a bullet. She heads straight towards the theater. When she checks, she discovers that her friend Greg was also shot. One of his friends was crying a lot and she tells Jess, "Do you know what Greg said before dying? He said Jess shot me, although Jess claims I didn't do anything. Why would I murder Greg?" And in the meantime, the second friend says, "That you've come into our room and told us that Greg is calling us. That's why we've come here, because of your command." Jess was completely unaware of all that is happening to her. In the meanwhile, a stranger enters and shoots both of her friends. Jess runs away from there and the killer was also pursuing her. However, he runs out of ammunition as Jess flees from him. Jess notices an axe there in the meantime. She keeps that axe with her and meanwhile, the killer has come behind her. Jess attacks him and makes him injured. And asks, "Who are you and what do you want?" Meanwhile, she hears a sound and the killer was saying, "To kill everyone and it is the only way to go home." Later, the murderer drove himself into the water. Jess was entirely alone there. She hears some sounds there in the meantime. She checks and discovers the same ship that is wrecked. Everyone was standing on it, including Jess. They were still pleading for assistance. Jess is startled by what she sees and departs from there. It becomes apparent at this point that Jess might have been caught in a time loop. Her friends have all boarded the ship. Jess was also boarded on this ship and was covertly observing everything. The same thing occurs as we have witnessed before for a while. Whatever had happened with her friends, the real Jess was the one who was secretly seeing this all. She became shocked to see everything. That is what is actually happening to her. Her key falls on the floor as a result of her worry and she runs into another room. When Jess has seen the real Jess there, that there is someone there, and her friend went after her. He has attacked Jess and he needs the real Jess. Additionally, the genuine Jess has told him everything. But no one was paying attention. Meanwhile, Jess pulls him away. As a result, his friend's head hits on a handle and he became injured there. Jess runs into a room and she finds many papers there, in which it was written, "Kill everyone when they'll be on the ship." When Jess rewrites that line on paper, she sees many lockets of her there. Jess realizes that she has been caught in a time loop as a result. The real Jess decides that she'll manage to come out from this time loop somehow, so she could meet her son. Jess takes a gun and goes to kill everyone, and meanwhile, her friend comes in front of her. He got injured, but Jess was unable to shoot him with her gun. She sees her duplicate Jess, who was with her friends, and immediately hides there. She tried to kill that Jess and because of this reason, her friend died there. Later, we see Greg who'd been killed, and the original Jess has come before her. It means, it was Jess who'd killed her friend Greg. The two friends of Jess, who were with Greg. The old Jess approaches them and takes them with her. When the real Jess calls them, the old Jess orders them to ignore her, and she takes both of them inside a room and stabs them with a knife after taking them in the room, in which a male friend of Jess was killed, and the friend who has survived goes into the control room and informs on the radio that she is killing us. And her sound was heard by Jess's friend, Greg, as we've seen before. It means, one loop has been completed here. Greg heard a storm sound in the meantime. The girl who claimed in the control room that she is killing us. The real Jess has approached her, but she believes that this Jess has murdered everyone. When the real Jess enters the ship while pursuing her friend, she becomes shocked to discover her friend Sally's numerous dead body. She becomes shocked to see whatever is happening around her. This all was happening because she had attempted to break the loops pattern. The old Jess also made an attempt to break this pattern. The real Jess tries to make her friend Sally understand. After arriving, the new Jess tosses the old Jess into the water. Likewise, Sally dies. Jess notices her entire group standing on the sunken ship once more, and asked for assistance, which the real Jess understands, that when everyone dies, a fresh loop begins. This group currently boards the ship for the third time. Once more, the real Jess must kill this group. She enters the theater once more and writes, "Go to the theater" on the mirror. When she arrives, she asks her two friends who were present in the room where the fresh meal was. "That Greg called you, as we have previously seen." Jess enters the theater and shoots her friend Greg. The new Jess was now a member of their group. She immediately shoots both of her friends. As we've already seen, Jess was escaping from a strange killer. And now it happens again, the new Jess scarily escaping from real Jess. the real Jess goes after the new Jess. The real Jess believes that after killing her whole group and Jess, she'll end this loop, but it doesn't. The new Jess has flung the real Jess into the water. The real Jess speaks the same thing in front of the new Jess before passing away. That is what the old Jess stated to the present Jess. To kill everyone, and this loop will then begin. After a while, we see the real Jess, who was on a beach. This was the same beach that we first saw at the beginning of the movie. Jess had a dream when she was sleeping on the triangle ship. She arrives at her residence and discovers another Jess. She was chastising her son for leaving his toy in the garden. Her kid saw her when she was looking inside her house. His paint spills onto the floor as a result. On this, Jess at home severely beats him. Meanwhile, after noticing this, she rings her doorbell. This Jess enters the house when that Jess leaves to check. After getting inside, the real Jess kills the old Jess. Her kid had seen this all, that we first saw at the beginning of the movie. She gives her son a hug and tells him, "It was just your nightmare." The real Jess after keeping the dead body of old Jess in a bag and keeps it in her car. When she was traveling with her son in the car, a girl collapses with her front screen and dies. When she went to bury her, there were many girls there. It indicates that there were numerous Jesses present there before the arrival of this Jess. She suddenly becomes really perplexed and moves on. Her son becomes quite concerned when he sees the blood on her car. As a result of Jess's deviation, a truck collides with her car. They were involved in an accident. Although Jess and her kid had passed away, the Jess who died was not real. The real Jess escaped and a taxi driver comes to her. He begins to inquire if you're okay and she responded, "Yes, I'm fine." After getting into the taxi, the real Jess goes to the same place from she to go by sitting into the triangle ship. In order to restart the loop for bringing her kid back. The taxi driver tells, "Ma'am, I've switched off my meter, will you return here?" And Jess replies, "Yeah, I'll be back here again." As she approaches the ship, she sees her same friend. He had asked, "Have you brought your son with you?" She claims that he had left for school. Greg also comes there and it was the same scene that we've seen at the start of the film. Jess was restarting this time period again. She was restarting the time loop again to bring her son back. Jess boards on the same ship which her whole group was. Jess's time loop most likely continues. Nobody is certain of when she will leave this triangle. Here, the real story was that Jess didn't treat well with her son. The death god has thrown her into a time loop to teach her a lesson. As they have read about the death god on the ship. And the only way out of this time loop was for her to realize her error. Later, this real Jess, to cover up her mistake, keeps killing the other Jesses. And also made an attempt to flee with her son. But Jess has never realized her mistake, and because of this, all was happening to her. That we've seen that she traps in time, the loop again and again. And the driver was actually the death god. Who over and over drops her in the same ship. The film ends with this.